You are listening to the Happiest Lives podcast with Jill Lillard, episode 106.
Welcome to the Happiest Lives podcast, where you'll learn to think better, feel better, and become the woman God says you already are. Here's your host, Jill Lillard.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Habit Turnaround series. Today, we're talking about another sneaky little habit that many of us pick up without even realizing it. It probably starts when we're very young, as our parents comfort us with pleasurable items so that we can calm down, feel better, and we don't have to be in a bad mood. So this is the habit of chasing quick thrills. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to review where we've been so far in this series. So in our first episode, 102, I introduced the habit turnaround. We looked at the habit loop, how every habit has a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. Or we could say there's the trigger, the habit or the routine, and then there's a reward that follows. And being aware of that is the first step to being able to create change. In episode 103, we talked about the habit of complaining. We saw how complaining can become a default response to discomfort, and the turnaround is gratitude and problem solving. You want to be able to move into a helpful lament where you turn toward the Lord, you ask what you can do instead, and ultimately you want to be able to move to a place of gratitude and trust. And then the next episode, 104, we talked about the habit of arguing, how arguing is often fueled by a desire to be right or feel in control. We don't like to feel vulnerable and we don't like to feel misunderstood. And so the turnaround is curiosity and connection. We followed that up with the habit of withdrawing. That was last week's episode. And we talked about when we disconnect, this might feel very protective, but it leads us feeling isolated and lonely. And so the turnaround is engagement and vulnerability. And this can be in your relationship with yourself, with God, and with other people. So today, as we talk about quick thrills, I want to say that we all love to feel good. Who doesn't want to feel good? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with pleasure. God made us to experience joy. But today we're going to talk about what happens when we start chasing dopamine hits, those fast bursts of feel good that actually pull us away from the life we want. In the long run, we don't feel as good. These little hits of pleasure can become a way to buffer. It's a way we numb our emotions instead of facing them. Seeking quick thrills are the little things we reach for when we want to feel better right now. They might seem harmless, even ordinary, like scrolling through social media, reaching for a snack, making a quick online purchase, or turning on a show just to have something going on in the background. Sometimes it's grabbing coffee when we're not really even wanting coffee, or staying busy with work when we're already worn out. They're called quick thrills because they give us a quick hit of dopamine, a chemical in the brain that's connected to pleasure and reward. Dopamine is a part of what makes something feel good, and it plays a powerful role in forming habits. When we do something that gives us a pleasurable result, the brain releases dopamine, and then it remembers that. The next time we feel discomfort, boredom, or stress, it says, hey, let's do that thing again. And so a habit starts to form. Now, once again, pleasure is not a bad thing. Dopamine is not a bad thing. God gave us dopamine. He created our bodies to experience joy, delight, beauty, and refreshment. Where we run into trouble is when we start using those quick dopamine hits to avoid what we don't want to feel, or if we're always looking to feel wonderful all the time. And that's when these little habits start to become a form of buffering, covering up or numbing the deeper emotions we'd rather not deal with. So instead of sitting in our sadness, we scroll. Instead of acknowledging stress, we pour a drink. Instead of processing loneliness or rejection, we stay busy. And over time, these quick fixes become our go-to response for emotional discomfort. Here's the problem. When we're constantly seeking dopamine hits, it doesn't just distract us from what we're feeling, it actually affects our connection. We disconnect from ourselves because we're not allowing ourselves to fully experience our emotions. We disconnect from others because we're often replacing meaningful interaction with mindless activity. And we disconnect from God because instead of turning to Him with our burdens and our emotions, we're looking for comfort somewhere else. And it goes deeper. When we overstimulate dopamine, when we're constantly chasing that next rush, it starts to affect our brain chemistry. What once felt satisfying doesn't feel as good anymore. It takes more scrolling, more food, more shopping, more productivity just to reach the same level of satisfaction. Our brains can become desensitized, and eventually the things that used to bring us true joy, time with our family, prayer, beauty, peace, can feel dull compared to the constant buzz of quick pleasure. Some of the quick thrills might look productive or responsible. Overworking, for example, it can feel like something to be proud of. But if we're using it to avoid what's really going on inside, if staying busy keeps us from slowing down enough to feel sadness or fear or emptiness, it's just another form of buffering. So while these habits may seem small, even harmless, over time, they keep us stuck. They keep us from facing what really needs our attention. And in the long run, they don't make us feel better. They leave us more disconnected, more depleted, and often more discouraged. It's not about judgment. It's about awareness, becoming aware of what we're reaching for and why. Noticing the small ways we try to escape discomfort instead of moving through it. So for now, I want you to just notice, what are the quick thrills you tend to reach for and what might be underneath them? Now that we've looked at some examples of quick thrills and how they can quietly pull us away from what matters most, let's talk about why we do this. Why do we keep turning to these small comforts even when we know they don't truly satisfy? From a brain science perspective, we're wired to do it. Our brains are desired to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. In psychology, we call this the emotional triad, and it's what helps us survive and stay efficient. But from a biblical perspective, this gives us a powerful window into the battle we often face between our flesh and our spirit. The Apostle Paul talks about this in Galatians 5. He says that the desires of the flesh are against the spirit, and the spirit is against the flesh. There's a tug of war inside of us. And when we're not paying attention, when we're not being intentional, it's easy to default to the flesh, to reach for something immediate, something easy, something that numbs the discomfort or gives us a sense of control. So in a sense, we could say this is even a form of idolatry. That might sound intense. However, idolatry simply means looking to anything other than God to give us what only He can ultimately provide. So when I'm overwhelmed and I grab my phone instead of sitting with the Lord, when I'm lonely and I feel the emptiness with food or work or entertainment, I'm seeking comfort, identity, peace, and joy. We all do this. It's part of the human condition. And a lot of these things aren't bad things. It's just when we do them in excess, or they are taking central focus in our lives and in our energy and our time and in our hearts, then they've been elevated to the place of an idol. We chase false gods, and it sometimes might come in the form of chocolate, Amazon boxes, or a packed schedule. And often we do it without even realizing it. And in a way, it makes sense. These things do bring momentary relief. They help us avoid pain. They comfort us. They make us feel better. They're the path of least resistance. However, the cost is real. Every time we chase a quick thrill to escape what we feel, we strengthen the flesh and quiet the spirit. We stay disconnected from the deeper work God wants to do in us. And we cease to enjoy the little pleasures of life, the simple things, sitting quiet and still and listening to the birds and watching the squirrels run around or going on a walk. that might not be very entertaining to us. It may not be stimulating enough. We may get a sense of restlessness, or it's hard for us to simply be there and be present. Instead of freedom, we end up in bondage. So there's a net negative consequence of these indulgences. Because that momentary pleasure doesn't last and we need more of it to feel okay, it becomes a cycle. And at the heart of it, it's not just about the behavior, it's about what we're believing, what we're trusting in, what we're worshiping. So yes, there's a brain science explanation for this, but there's also a spiritual battle going on, one that invites us to wake up, pay attention, and ask, am I feeding my flesh, or am I walking in step with the Spirit? In the next part of this conversation, we're going to look at how all of this shows up in the habit loop, so you can begin to see the pattern, name it, and eventually turn it around. So let's look at this habit in light of the habit loop, which in the beginning, I reminded you that the habit loop includes 3 parts: the cue, the habit itself, and the result. So the outcome that teaches your brain whether to repeat the behavior. So let's say the cue is emotional discomfort. You're feeling overwhelmed, maybe after a long day filled with unmet expectations or a tense conversation. You're tired, maybe you're a little lonely, and your body is craving some sort of relief. You've sacrificed all day, and so you turn to your vice. The habit is you head into the kitchen and you start baking. You reach for sugary snacks. Maybe you make a batch of cookies, not because you're hungry, but because the process and the reward gives you a sense of comfort and control. I know this is one I've been guilty of. This is my go-to comfort. There's something soothing about mixing the ingredients, smelling something sweet in the oven, and knowing there's a warm treat waiting at the end. And it can be attached to so many childhood memories and good things. And yet the result is, yes, you might feel better temporarily. Eating the cookie gives you a rush of dopamine. It's a small pleasure that calms your nervous system. It gives you a sense of relief and even joy. Your brain registers this as a win. When I feel bad, this helps. And that reinforces the loop. But here's the catch, and the reason this habit becomes problematic. Even though the moment brings comfort, the net result isn't so positive. Now, I'm not saying that is the case for everyone, and that's the result of baking all the time or watching a movie or getting on social media. However, if it is a habit that you keep going to over and over to buffer, and you're experiencing a net negative consequence and you continue to do it, that is where we experience the problem of this habit. So physically, the sugar may leave you feeling bloated, tired, or more irritable later. That's one thing I have found for myself in sugar. Maybe you've been trying to care for your health and now you feel discouraged or stuck because the habit is working against your goals. Over time, it may contribute to struggles with your weight or your energy levels, not to mention your relationship with food and your body. And emotionally, the deeper feeling, the one that led you to the kitchen in the first place, it hasn't gone away. You just pushed it down. You're still overwhelmed. You're still hurting. You're still carrying that tension. Only now it's been covered up and postponed. And underneath it all, you may feel even more disconnected from yourself and from the Lord. That's the net negative consequence. The quick thrill gave you temporary relief, but at the cost of something more lasting. What looked like comfort actually became a way to avoid connection and true healing. And the more the loop is repeated, the stronger it becomes. Okay, so this is the part I want to remind you. This is not about guilt or judgment. I just want you to be curious. I just want you to consider and look at some of your habits. If you're always seeking the next dopamine hit, if you're always seeking pleasure and comfort, because that feels like you're in the positive place in life and that life is good, and yet it never seems to fully satisfy, and you find yourself feeling down again and then reaching back out for this comfort, and it's just this repetitive cycle, then this is something I just want you to consider. Before we can really truly turn a habit around, we have to start with something deeper than just trying to change the behavior. We have to ask, is this actually a problem for me? What is a problem for one person may not be a problem for another. And so I gave my personal example of sugar. That may not be a problem for someone else. Someone else might be able to bake cookies, enjoy a tasty treat, and it doesn't become a vicious cycle for them. Someone else might be able to get on social media to check a few updates, and it's not that they're stuck there for hours. Someone might be able to go on Amazon, buy a couple things, and not get caught up in this trap of wanting to spend money that they really shouldn't be spending on things that they don't really need. So let's be honest, sometimes the quick thrill feels worth it. The snack, the scroll, the distraction, because it gives us the relief, it softens the edges of the day, and it works in the moment. But if we're willing to slow down, take a closer look, get curious, we may see areas of our life that the negative is quietly overriding the positive. We are restless. We're just not happy. We cannot find that joy in the simple things. Yes, these things might help in the short term, but what is it costing you long term? Maybe it's your energy, your focus, your health. Maybe it's your peace. Maybe it's your ability to sit with the Lord and be honest with what's really going on in your heart. And that's the turning point. When the short-term comfort starts to feel small compared to the long-term discomfort. When you begin to feel the weight of what you're avoiding. And when you realize, I want more than this. That's when you're ready to begin the turnaround. It starts with a vision. You need a picture of what's better than the dopamine hit. What's more life-giving than the relief? What kind of woman you want to become, not just in a Pinterest board kind of way, but in the actual quiet moments of your day. Do you want to be grounded, present, peaceful, connected to your body, your emotions, and God? Do you want to model peace to your children? Show up in your marriage with openness instead of irritability. Be someone who runs to Jesus instead of to distraction. That vision is what anchors the change. Because when the craving hits, it's not enough to say, I shouldn't do this. That just leads to shame. But if you can say, this isn't who I want to be, and I see something better, then you're operating from purpose, not punishment. From here, the habit turnaround becomes a series of small but powerful choices. So I want to introduce you to the 10-minute habit turnaround. This is going to be very practical. I want you to imagine you're standing in your kitchen. You've had a long day. You're tired. You're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, disconnected. You open the pantry. The craving hits. You want the treat, the bag of chips, the cookies, the chocolate. This is where I like to use something I call the 10-minute habit turnaround. It's a gentle way to interrupt the cycle, not with shame or control, but with compassion and curiosity. Now, this doesn't mean you only give yourself 10 minutes to feel the feelings and move on, but it is a way to ease into a different response by simply committing to pause. You can say to yourself, I'm not saying I can't have the treat. I'm just going to pause for 10 minutes first. If I still want it after that, I'll come back to it. You'll be surprised how adding this pause can redirect your entire evening. Just 10 minutes of intention can create a window for the Holy Spirit to speak, for your body to regulate, and for your heart to reconnect with what you really need. So here's how to spend those 10 minutes in a way that brings clarity and connection. I want you to get curious and ask, what am I actually feeling right now? So as soon as you notice the repetitive behavior where you're seeking some sort of dopamine hit, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What just happened that stirred something up in me? What am I really craving emotionally, not just physically? Maybe it's anxiety, boredom, loneliness, or exhaustion. Maybe it's a deeper feeling of rejection, resentment, or disappointment. Just name it. This isn't about fixing things. It's about becoming aware. That awareness alone starts to loosen the power that craving has over you. So you're pausing and you're finding the emotion by asking yourself a question. The second thing I want you to do is to sit with the feeling in your body. Instead of running from the feeling, just allow it to be there. Close your eyes, place your hand on your heart or on your belly, and just breathe. You might say, "This is sadness. This is tension. This is vulnerability, and I can stay here with it." Let your body feel the emotion instead of reacting to it. Notice the sensations in your body. Even just a few slow breaths sends the message to your nervous system, "I'm okay. I don't have to fix anything right now." This is a way you're validating and acknowledging what it is that you're feeling and recognizing that this feeling that you're trying so desperately to avoid, that it can't hurt you. The third thing I want you to do is to reflect on your deeper desire. Ask yourself, what do I really want right now? What would bring true peace, not just relief? Maybe what you need is to be seen, to rest, to feel heard, or to simply breathe. You might say, "I think I want sugar, but what I really want is to feel calm. What I really want is to know I'm safe, to know I'm loved, to not be alone in this moment." This connects you to your deeper values, things like peace, presence, integrity, and intimacy with God. And the last part of the 10-minute habit turnaround, give yourself an alternative, something small and sensory, something that doesn't numb you, but nurtures you. You could try one of these. Step outside and take 5 slow breaths. Light a candle and sit in silence. Take a warm shower or wash your face slowly. Put on some worship music that centers your mind on the Lord. Notice 3 things in the room that are comforting and beautiful. These are what I call planned distractions, not to run from the emotion, but to re-anchor you in the present moment. They help you reconnect with the simple pleasures of life that don't leave you feeling worse afterwards. So the 10-minute habit turnaround is not a rigid rule. It's not a punishment. It's a grace-filled pause that gives you space to check in with your heart, notice what you need, and respond with intention. You're going to pause and move into what it is you've been trying to avoid, and you're going to recognize it's not so bad. Sometimes you'll still eat the cookie, and that's okay. But even then, you've practiced something important. You've paused, you've noticed, you've connected, and that alone is a powerful shift. You're becoming the kind of woman who lives awake, who doesn't buffer her life away, who makes space for the Holy Spirit to meet her right there in the pantry, in the craving, in the pause. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this conversation gave you a new way to think about those quick thrill habits, those dopamine hits. And I hope you feel encouraged to try the 10-minute habit turnaround the next time that a craving sneaks in. In fact, I want to challenge you to try to do it 10 times. Keep track of 10 times when you get an opportunity to practice the 10-minute habit turnaround and see what happens. If this resonated with you, I want to remind you that inside my coaching groups like Clarity and Courage, I offer support and guidance using powerful tools like the heart scan process and the feel method. These tools can help you gain deeper insight into your emotions, honor your values, and begin to respond to life in a way that aligns with who God created you to be. You don't have to figure this out alone, and you're not meant to. These habits can be turned around one small moment at a time. You can always learn more and access resources to support you at myhappyvault.com. And be sure to come back next week. We'll be talking about the habit of procrastination. It's a big one, and I can't wait to walk you through it. If you're enjoying this podcast, make sure to follow so you never miss an episode. And if you'd take a moment to leave a review, it helps more women like you find this work and experience the same transformation that you are. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, stay curious, and keep turning toward the life you were made for. Quick question. Have you grabbed your free mini course, The 4 Things You Must Do to Become the Happiest Wife? I'd love to give you 4 simple tips plus a free workbook to help you process your relationship and find greater satisfaction. Sign up today at myhappyvault.com and I'll show you how to change your marriage without the exhausting work of trying to control your husband. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who needs encouragement. See you next time.